Farming food and fashion for a discerning world is serious business in Aotearoa, New Zealand. There are new opportunities everywhere just waiting for the open-minded. Sarah's Country shines a light on the matters that matter most. And here's your host, Sarah Perriam.
Kia ora and welcome to Sarah's Country, where we embrace the challenge that has been laid before us to balance the business of producing food and fashion that is sensitive to people, profit, and the environment. Can we do it all? It's not always as easy as it seems, though, is it, for those who work in the sector? Now, if you missed our very first show for the second season of Sarah's Country, we kicked off yesterday. It is now available on demand. But there, I explained how there is 3 new formats for the show for 2021. And on a Tuesday, we have a cool new themed show. So we theme it around a particular opinion, and it's called The Opinion Maker, where we bring together the views on the matters that matter most. So in the Opinion Maker show, we bring you the debate and thought-provoking ideas from our guests that will set the scene on their thoughts of the day, and they're then broken down by our panel of industry experts, leaders and thinkers in that particular area. It's centred around the week's Farmers Weekly's Pulpit feature. It's an opinion article in the newspaper, which is always a great read in the opinion section of the paper every week. It's amazing how those who are very brave to hold their views on those matters in the agribusiness and agri-science world in Aotearoa, New Zealand, they certainly generate a lot of discussion. And of course, we want to continue that on into an audio and visual on Sarah's Country's Opinion Maker show on a Tuesday. So to kick us off, the pulpit this week is from Meat Industry Association CEO Sirma Karapeeva. Sirma breaks down the challenges facing the red meat sector, but also the opportunities, she says, where tightly focused collaboration brings for everyone directly or indirectly benefiting from New Zealand's second highest export market, selling over $9 billion of products into 120 countries. So, Sirma's going to unpack for us from her pulpit what the headwinds are and how, if we are resilient, we can achieve our goal of growing sustainable value together through a refreshed red meat strategy, which was launched just before Christmas. Now, on our panel to close the show, sheep farmer and chair for Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Andrew Morrison, and the value-add meat marketer, Angus Pure's director, Guy Sargant, is going to join me both to discuss the how we're going to achieve this, beyond and behind the farm gate in this very uncertain world that we live in. Now, everything from policy uncertainty to trade uncertainty to, of course, consumer preferences. But we have seen a red meat sector strategy. It was about a decade ago, 2011, when the Meat Industry Association was formed. And this was after 50 years of criticism for its fight for individual survival in the face of its massive challenges. Now, I always love reading meat industry commentator Allan Barber's opinion columns in Farmers Weekly, and he is one who will either be scathing or supportive of this strategy refresh and the organisation's involved's ability to achieve what they have set out. If you're watching along with us live, of course, you know the drill if you're a regular, but if you don't, look for the comments section on Facebook and YouTube, and certainly will be sent through to me here on the iPad. Fire through questions for any of our guests, because this is what makes Sarah's Country unique in that it is live around the world in multiple different platforms. So I do want to hear from you, as well as I have a few more other things I'd love to get your thoughts and opinions on, of course, as well as I want to hear what the weather's doing. Golly gosh, it's gone to extreme here in Canterbury today with high gusting winds to the point it's bringing fire just not too far away from us in the Port Hills. So yes, please send me where you are around the country and how that crazy summer weather, whether it's snow in Central Otago through to some extreme highs on the east coast, are you getting the moisture you need or too much Let's talk about weather as well tonight. Now, Allan Barber, as I said, is up next on Sarah's Country, and I want to read out for you later in the show an Instagram message that I received from a listener. I love hearing from you. Either email me, sarah@sarahscountry.com, or of course, you can drop into the DMs on social media. That's direct message me. I do check them all, and I love bringing your thoughts to the table. She has a challenge at her workplace she's trying to deal with, and this is involving her pride connected to the red meat sector, and we need to give her some advice. So all that up very shortly here on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with Farmers Weekly, the place New Zealand farmers turn to for a trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism. Stay connected to the matters that matter most by subscribing to My Daily Digest at farmersweekly.co.nz.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
Or horse feed.
or bee suits.
Children.
Chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help you farm,
Grow,
Milk! Dredge!
Rhea, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Now, of course, Sarah's Country is broadcast in strategic alliance with the great team at Farmers Weekly, which is New Zealand's most trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism and opinions. And we want you to stay connected on all the major stories every single day, not just when the paper arrives. So can I highly recommend subscribing to My Daily Digest. It's an email packed with the latest stories for free in your inbox, and it's pulled together every day from Farmers Weekly's editor Brian Gibson, with his opinion at the top on some of the latest daily news that comes across his desk. So no excuse to be out of the loop on the pub chat. Go to farmersweekly.co.nz and register for that newsletter. So if you missed it, the Meat Industry Association and Beef and Lamb have released what they've called a refresh strategy for a solid plan for the next 5 years to successfully identify and unlock market opportunities, while continuously improving sustainability, productivity and prosperity for sheep and beef farmers. Our next guest has called it a renewal of vows between the organisations that represent the meat industry, such as processors, and the one that represents farmers. Is this more than a document of adjectives and pretty pictures, though? Allan Barber, meat industry commentator, joins us now. Evening, Allan, and let's start with what the weather's doing in your quarter.
Well, funnily enough, today I've actually mown the lawns and done weed eating, because having come back from the South Island yesterday, things had grown, but it's blowing a bit of a gale, but we've had no rain.
Yeah, and how was it where you were down south?
Well, we travelled down through the North Island. We did a 4-day road trip from Auckland to Dunedin, and we picked up my son's car in Auckland and drove it to Dunedin in 4 days. So we saw the whole country almost in 4 days, and we had amazing weather until it rained on Sunday night in Dunedin. So and then it was fine in the morning.
I had this dreadful thought, Allan, before we get into this, that you were going to say you flew down to get a boat, because outside here last week, a boat caught on fire outside Untitled, and we found out, because we're investigative journalists here, of course, why this boat randomly went on fire connected to a car. And this guy had left the outboard down, and the sparks were going all the way down past the road. How you wouldn't even feel that? But I do think, yes, feel for him.
We were driving a 25-year-old Volvo, and it didn't really like going above 100, but it went very comfortably, sort of somewhere between 80 and 100, went really, really comfortably, and we made our way with no trouble at all, apart from one fatal crash halfway down between Christchurch and Dunedin, where the road was closed and we had to do a major detour. It took us about 45 minutes off, added onto the trip. But apart from that, everything was fine.
Now, yes, absolutely. Our roads are a lot quieter than they normally are at this time of year, especially leading into Chinese New Year. I know that much. Now, Allan, we're here, of course, your column, regularly Meaty Matters. How much meat is actually in this latest sandwich, so to speak? Should farmers and wider stakeholders be optimistic about it?
Well, about the strategy refresh, yeah. Well, I've definitely been complimentary about it, and to clarify, the phrase renewal of vows was actually Sirma's phrase. She told me that, and I decided it was so good I had to include it. But it's when I look back to the 2011 strategy, I realised that it was right at the beginning of the cooperation between the MIA and Beef and Lamb. MIA has been going a hell of a lot longer than the 10 years. They've been in existence representing the companies, but it used to be something where the company chief executives would come together for a couple of days or a day and a night. And I remember sitting in on one meeting one year, and there was a stand-up fight between two of the chief executives of the industry at the time, one of them being Graham Thompson from Fortex, which was under a bit of stress at the time. And I think Stuart Barnett decided that he didn't know what Graham was talking about, but he ended up saying, well, he called me up, whatever. And of course, probably from Graham's perspective, Stuart was. But from Stuart's perspective, Graham had gone into his territory, opened up a meat plant, and was then trying to procure lamb straight out of PPCS's backyard. So that was the sort of competition that you had in the meat industry in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and it really didn't get any better until probably the early 2000s. And gradually they started talking to each other again and actually talking like intelligent people, and they decided that cooperation was actually far better than competition. So that produced the initial strategy. I went to the launch of that strategy in the Beehive. John Key gave the introductory speech. He showed, as usual, a tremendous grasp of the industry's issues and problems and challenges. And I thought, this looks quite good, but the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. Now, 10 years on, we've got to the point where Beef and Lamb and the meat companies, MIA, are working really, really well together. And I think this is a beautifully integrated plan which will see those responsible for the different bits of it actually being tasked with achieving the objectives, the goals, and I think it will do really well.
I just want to highlight on the acknowledgement of challenges that you had within your column, where you stated that times have changed and so many of these challenges have probably forced these organisations to come together to collaborate, such as Great Britain's membership of the European Union, the removal of subsidies in the 80s, the farm receiverships, dramatically reducing sheep flock due to, in essence, land use change, a decline in wool prices, continuously changing consumer tastes, droughts, floods, and more recently a raft of new regulations. You can see why there has been a decline in sheep and beef farmers over this time. Does this mean that a lot of this strategy and collaboration has come down to the simple identity of these organisations going forward?
I think the organisations have struggled to define themselves to meet the objectives of their members in such a way that the members say, yes, it's worth putting money into supporting these organisations. And Beef and Lamb, of course, and its previous identities of meat board and meat and wool have had to put a proposal up to their levy-paying members every 3 years, I think, to gain support. And that, in the early 2000s, came quite close to being defeated. In fact, they lost the wool vote, so they didn't get the support to continue putting money into wool. But they have continued to be able to put money into supporting the red meat sector. And I think that's given them a much clearer focus on what they need to be concentrating on. You look at the things like the Farm Assurance Program, which is now, I think, been formed as an incorporated society. That is working really, really well to provide farmers with the tools to exist in the modern world, to profit and to continue to thrive in the modern world. Because I'm currently reading a book by James Rebanks, which is called English Pastoral. It's a beautiful story, but it really is quite challenging, really, to see how trying to farm in Britain has been driven to the lowest common denominator. The supermarkets putting the kibosh on the farmer to get them to produce for the lowest possible cost, and in the end, the farmer has one choice, two choices. You either add volume to your farm to survive, or you add volume to your farm and you go bankrupt. And he chose the way of actually trying to survive by doing the things that his grandfather used to do. And I think this document, the Red Meat Sector Strategy, provides a lot of the tools to enable New Zealand farmers to survive in this modern world, but while at the same time going back to the sort of traditional ways of doing farming. And I'm not talking regenerative, but what I am talking about is mixed farming, not trying to, I think dairying in New Zealand really hit the worst possible point. It hit peak cow maybe 3 years ago. All the irrigation in Canterbury and in Southland was enabling dairy farms to be introduced. When they started irrigating the Mackenzie country and turning the Mackenzie country green, I think that was the signal that really things were getting totally out of control. And I'd like to think that the combination of the new government regulations, which hopefully the government will be realistic about trying to implement, and farmers' desire to farm in a more traditional way than the purely corporate way, will see farming find its identity again as something which can preserve the best in the soil, or preserve the best type of stock, the best type of grasses, and use less insecticides, less pesticides, but still achieve good both ecological, environmental outcomes, but also profit outcomes for the farmer. So I'm optimistic, and I think this new strategy, this new red meat sector strategy, provides the template for that to happen.
I just want to lastly ask, one thing that stood out for me was that it wasn't just about some lofty decade goals. It was actually bringing it back into more of a 5-year action plan. And there was a clear identification of who was going to achieve what by when. Is that stood out for you as more of a measurable outcome that we can actually hold more to account on?
Yes, well, the 2025 goals, which are the sort of the base for the achievement of the 2030 plan, are market access, innovation, and sustainability. And then there are some clearly achievable definitions of what has to be approached, the tasks that have to be addressed to achieve these goals under each of those. And I think they will enable the sector to meet the government's what the government has said must happen. Otherwise, the government will take it over and will do it for them. And I think that clearly that would be a really terrible outcome if the government were to say, you can't do it yourself, so we're going to tell you what you've got to do. And I think the industry has really got together and has put together a plan which is capable of delivering what it can do, which will meet the government's objectives.
Thank you so much, Allan Barber, regular commentator in Farmers Weekly, as well as online on his own blog as well. Check out Meaty Matters as the particular column where Allan breaks down his opinion on this refresh strategy. And I tell you what, reading Allan's comments on this actually made me feel optimistic and refreshed as well going into the new year. So can I please suggest that you go and check that out? Now, as I said earlier, I had an Instagram message from a viewer. Her name is Julia Hardwick Smith. She says, love following along with all your podcasts while I work away at Assure Quality. She has a bit of a situation whereby they're hosting a vegetarian lunch, and she's absolutely fuming about it, as she's pretty proud to work for a company that supports the whole agricultural industry. As she grew up on a sheep and beef farm in central Taranaki, and very, very proud of that, with half of their family farm native bush, and recently had 10 kiwi birds put in it, which is so amazing. My parents, she says, do their best to look after the land, and she's fuming because vegetarian excludes the food that her family produces, and she's really proud to follow along that the news is that sheep and beef farmers are on their way to becoming carbon neutral, and so she's trying to convince these people in Wellington that want to have this vegetarian lunch and give them more advice on the situation, but it's falling on deaf ears. She's asking me for my opinion on the situation and how to deal with this going forward, because I know that it generates a lot of emotion within us who do connected with the realities of our New Zealand-based pasture-raised farming systems in comparison to the facts that people are fed. I'd love your thoughts, not only just in the comments live, but flick me an email, sarah@sarahscountry.com, and I just would love to pass those on to Julia as well, because, you know, this is a collective sort of issue that we all face in the realities of our day-to-day, wherever we are. But the thing is, with these opinion maker programs, is that we can actually unpack it all within one theme over the next hour. So yeah, absolutely. Julia, you're not alone. That's the one thing in the frustration. At the same time, take note that our markets globally certainly appreciate what New Zealand does, and we will unpack that in terms of those opportunities, even though there's some headwinds, with this week's Farmers Weekly's pulpit author, Sirma Karapeeva, the CEO of Meat Industry Association.
This is Sarah's Country. Catch the latest on the matters that matter most wherever you are. Listen to Sarah's Country on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple or Google Podcasts. Try asking Alexa or Siri. Play Sarah's Country on podcast.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing
or horse feed
or bee suits.
Children.
Chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help you farm,
Grow, milk, dredge,
rear, come on in.
because we're out here too.
Welcome to Sarah's Country and the very first of our opinion maker themed Tuesdays. I think I deep down think that you guys are going to like this because it's a way that we can unpack the different issues and challenges that the sector faces and bring together an array of different thoughts from the different corners and opinions around it. And we're kicking off in the theme of red meat because Beef and Lamb New Zealand Meat Industry Association came together and refreshed their strategy just before Christmas. And so, of course, one to put pen to paper and highlight the opportunities and challenges is, of course, Sirma Karapeeva, who joins us now on Sarah's Country. Do we say Happy New Year?
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, Sarah, and congratulations on your new format for your show. It looks very exciting, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be the first of this new show format. So, yeah, very honoured.
Now, just like on a lighter note, before we get into some meatier topics, so excuse the pun, I think you told me that you were going to have a pretty low key. Was that right? Break? How did the jobs around the house get on?
Oh, look, for a change, Wellington put on the sunshine and, normally people leave Wellington in a hurry come the Christmas break. This time I think people were probably trying to come back into Wellington because we had sunshine and we had settled weather and it was great. It was actually quite nice to have a staycation and just mush around the house and go to the beach. And we don't live very far from the beach, so it was super easy to go for swims and enjoy the beautiful weather that we were having.
Now, I just have to note, we spoke to our producers in the UK last night in full lockdown, potentially through till March in Scotland in the middle of winter. And I must be hard listening to Sarah's Country again, all the stories of summer and the freedoms. So we must appreciate that. Now, talking about COVID, in your opinion piece, you say that we emerged as a hero, the meat sector emerged as a hero because of the way that we handled our shorter lockdown and regained some social license. I'm not sure if you heard my little Instagram message I got from a viewer there. It still feels though that domestically we still are in a bit of a beat up all the time though. And you've got the likes of Duncan Garner, do I dare say it, on a vegan diet and talking about it on our mainstream breakfast show. I mean, how on earth do we continue to build on regaining a social license when normality is set in New Zealand?
Yeah, well, look, COVID, for all its worries and all the challenges that it created both here in New Zealand and internationally, there were some silver linings to that very dark cloud. And I think the social license aspect was certainly one of those for us because very quickly, consumers all around the world, including in New Zealand, they started to think more carefully about their health and their well-being, and they started to look for products which naturally help with healthy living, healthy lifestyle, and protecting their immunity and the likes. And of course, New Zealand grass-fed, pasture-raised red meat is right up there in terms of the benefits that it can deliver for your nutrition, for your well-being, and the likes. And we saw a big uptake from consumers specifically seeking out that grass-fed, pasture-raised red meat and cooking it at home in lockdown situations, feeding their family good, nutritious, quality product to help them get through the challenges of COVID and being locked down and at home. So I think, it is a shift. I heard the question of your previous question that you got on the phone about vegetarians and having a vegetarian event and all that. Those are very personal beliefs that people hold, and I don't think that we can change people's deeply held beliefs. But what we can do and what we are doing is we're giving them good quality, credible scientific information to help them make those choices, help them make informed choices about what they want to put in their bodies. And on that point, I'm very excited because towards the end of last year, yes, we released the sector strategy, but there's a whole bunch of other work that was going on, and one of them one of the key pieces of work as a research program called the pasture-raised advantage. And as far as I'm aware, it's probably the first of its kind, whereby we are looking at the health and wellness impacts of consuming pasture-raised red meat, beef and lamb, versus grain-finished red meat, versus the commercially available plant-based protein that you can buy in your supermarket. So it's quite a comprehensive study, and it involves 2 clinical trials as well, which will map how the body of this group of people will respond to eating these various meals. So, that's really interesting and exciting, because at the end of this program, we will have very quality, scientifically sound, robust data that we can share with consumers to help them make informed decisions.
And I dare I say it, Allan was talking about a book he's reading at the moment, and please don't judge me, but it's called The Power Plate Diet, and it's by a celebrity trainer. Golly, none of this is sounding good for me right now at all. But she trains all the country music stars in Nashville, so that's why I follow her, of course. Okay. And I was actually just intrigued to download the ebook because I had some time to actually find out what type of advice the celebrity trainers are giving when it comes to dietary. And I was stoked to find anti-inflammatory advice focused on red meat, and it was organic grass-fed diets, and this is into influential markets in the US. And so it's fantastic. We're on the right track. However, Sirma, with our markets the way they are, and the US's COVID situation being the worst that it has been, the volatility when it comes to meat as a commodity, which a majority of our beef is going into, we are unable to identify that advantage. So how is the strategy able to hold on to that value chain, or so to speak, the story chain throughout and right to market?
Right. Well, of course, COVID has seen a huge amount of disruptions across all the supply chains, and particularly into that food service channel where we do export a lot of our product, be it into the US or even in Europe. And in both those places, we've seen massive disruptions. So while the food service may have slowed down, we've seen an uptake of retail. And people are obviously looking to buy product in the supermarket or through online e-commerce platforms and to cook that product at home, which is a real opportunity for us to continue to engage with the consumer, and in fact to engage with the consumer much more directly, because they are interacting with our product. It's not as if they're going to a restaurant before they can interact with the product. So in the US, we're seeing a number of high-end retail chains, supermarkets that are stocking our product and promoting it exactly as what you described. It's grass-fed. It has benefits for your immunity responses. It has benefits for your health. And, consumers are seeking it out and purchasing it precisely for those reasons. The Taste Pure Nature story that our colleagues in Beef and Lamb launched last year, the year before last, is going very well in the United States, and also now in certain segments of the Chinese market as well. And it's resonating with those consumers that are seeking out that premium pasture-raised red meat product for their own consumption at home. So I think this is, it is challenging, but it's certainly an opportunity. And we've identified it, and I think the strategy, as well as the work that we're already doing, will be key to helping us focus our efforts on extracting the maximum that we can from those silver linings in this horrible COVID situation.
Yeah, and that Taste Pure Nature has been incredible in regards to influencer marketing. We will play for you, if you're watching along live, a video that Beef and Lamb have given us to showcase how far and wide their marketing efforts have gone. And if you are listening to this on demand, we will put a link in the description to watch that video and see the marketing efforts, particularly in the US, as as well. Sirma, I don't want to end on trade because we talk a lot about trade in our other interviews, and please search Sirma Karapeeva in Sarah's country for her thoughts on, everything from Brexit through to the battle going on with the World Trade Organization, because Sirma knows a thing or two about trade. So, Sirma, what I do want to focus on is the big elephant that continuously hangs over every farmer's shoulders, brings much anxiety, which is uncertainty in policy. I see in your opinion piece, 2021 is your advocacy as Meat Industry Association to government to say, halt, put a pause, let's actually deal with what we've got. How are you going to do that?
Yeah. Well, look, this is a message that we've already started rolling out with government and with ministers whenever we speak with them, because clearly there has been last year, and already we're hearing that there will be a continuation of a whole lot of new policy proposals being rolled out, whether it's in climate change, water, fresh water. I'm sure that your speakers later on in the program will talk about that. In our area, particularly around immigration and labour relations, there's a bunch of policies that are coming out, and it's just too much too fast. I don't think intrinsically that we are opposed to direction of travel. I think the issue is with the pace at which this is happening, and the fact that there isn't enough time to fully understand, analyse and anticipate what are the consequences of these very quick regulatory changes. And we know, I know from past experiences that if you put something in place that you haven't fully thought through and haven't fully consulted or taken on board the views of the people that are going to be most affected by it, it's not going to work. And so, our plea to government will continue to be, take a moment, pause, work with us to fully analyse and assess the implications and the impacts of these policies, and also to see whether there are better ways of actually achieving the objectives that government is clearly after. We're not against those objectives. Of course, we care about the environment, we care about people's welfare and the likes, but there must be other ways to achieve those objectives without increasing the costs that our stakeholders will face, and without making it more complicated for everyone along the supply chain.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sirma Karapeeva, CEO of Meat Industry Association there. I just was thinking when Sirma said that about getting everyone to come along on board, you'd think that government wasn't made up of any parents that understand how to get children in the car or actually get them to get on board with what you're hoping them to achieve. It's simple psychology, really. You don't rush them and don't give them the idea of why we're doing what we're doing. And I'm sure that the outcome will get there eventually, and things are looking a lot more positive in terms of the environment we're in than it was when their red meat strategy report was released in 2011. I can say that much. Now, as Sirma alluded to, our panel is made up of two esteemed gentlemen, Andrew Morrison, Chair of Beef and Lamb New Zealand, and Director for Angus Pure, Guy Sargant, who will join me very shortly here on Sarah's Country to break down the thoughts of Allan, Barber and Sirma Karapeeva, as well as this refreshed red meat strategy.
This is Sarah's Country. Join the conversation. Have thoughts on an interview? Or have you got questions you want answered by a future guest? Let us know. Email sarah@sarahscountry.com.
In 2020, our Kiwi farming story went from strength to strength. Engaging with conscious foodies in the US and China, they heard about the best grass-fed beef and lamb in the world.
You think about nacho, you think about beef, you think about chicken, you don't think about lamb. You're using lamb.
And it's just not just lamb, it's like grass-fed lamb from New Zealand. You can really taste the grass-fed part of it.
able to integrate and layer the Taste Pure Nature Origin campaign with our own Silver Fern Farms branded marketing campaigns, we're able to have more impact and influence over participants in the value chain and get greater reach and engagement with our end target consumers.
Our collaboration with Beef and Lamb New Zealand and Taste Pure Nature, alongside our co-brand partner in Beijing, provided a great chance for us to test how effective Taste Pure Nature could be to broaden our reach into Chinese consumers. The results exceeded our expectations.
This is awesome. I reckon they're getting the message. What we're doing on farm to enhance and protect our environment, to look after our animals, and to build on the platform of showcasing to the world our grass-fed difference.
Fantastic to see a couple of regulars jumping into the comments. Michael Ross, love the symbolic boot. Yeah, I'm throwing a few puns in. I'm in a sort of humorous mood, Michael. And Brett, great to see you along. Thank you for the song request. I will look that up on my drive home. I really appreciate it. Of course, if you've just tuned in, we are a part of a new format called Opinion Maker, where every Tuesday we're going to have a themed show, and it will end with a fantastic panel of our guests to break down what you've just heard. And so I welcome to the program Angus Pure Director, Guy Sargant and Beef and Lamb Chair, Andrew Morrison. Evening, gentlemen. Firstly, Andrew, what's the weather doing where you are?
Yeah, had a great day today. Got a bit of moisture, which is always good for Southland. And, because over at the South Targo farm, working with Angus cattle there, guys. So, look, had a great day. And Southland's looking a picture.
Manawatu on a good day, Guy. You never go too far.
Well, as normal, Sarah, you know this, it blows and blows and blows, and it's doing that again today. But we've had some rain, and the farmers will love it. It's really looking good at the Manawatu at the moment.
Yes, certainly. There's a reason when those windmills are on top of that hill, that's for sure. Hey, so red meat sector strategy refresh is the theme, and I didn't actually explain to our listeners and viewers that we will put in the comments, in the actual text, and also where the description is, a link to the strategy. And I have a copy here, and it is some good reading in terms of some positivity, if you're in need of some, in terms of the direction that we're on. So we've heard from Allan, Barber, meat industry commentator, on his very complimentary, I'd say, review of the strategy, being a meat industry commentator for quite some time. And of course, Sirma Karapeeva was one of many involved in the strategy and the author of The Pulpit. Guy, I'll start with you actually. I mean, I say that we've probably known each other nearly a decade, and how far Angus Pure has come in the last decade. What has been highlighted was the environment that farmers and processors were operating in for individual survival, and it was not, you wouldn't even use the word collaborative back in the day. How far have we come?
To be perfectly honest with you, Sarah, probably not a long way. And in the red meat industry, I'm referring now to beef, because I sort of feel when you're involved with a breed like Angus, and I'm pleased to hear, Andrew, you've got some Angus cows on your property. But it's frustrating when you've got quality product and you can't get rewarded for it. And it's been like this ever since I've been involved. I mean, Angus Pure has been around for 20 years. This is our 20th year this year. And for all those 20 years, we have fought meat companies about rewarding people for quality. and we still do today. We see some good evidence of meat companies just sticking with the status quo and not rewarding people. But we do also see on the positive side, we've got the Alliance Handpick program, we've got Silver Ferns EQ program. That's all positive stuff, and we're seeing farmers get rewarded for that. But generally, people are just, getting paid for weight, and that's what pays the bills, I know. But the reality is we want to see we'd like to see a grading system. I wish I'd seen that meat strategy, some sort of talk around that, and maybe Andrew might want to talk to it. But the reality is that I look at Australia and I see the MSA grading system there, and America and their grading system, and people are focused on eating quality. And that's what the Angus breeders, all Angus breeders are about. We're all about, at the end of the day, putting a better steak on the table. At the moment, research tells us 1 in 4 steaks will give you a good eating experience. Well, that's just not good enough. When I sit down and have chicken, we know as much as it's very bland and it's very, apart from our Bostock chickens and 1 or 2 organic chickens like that, they're very tasteless, but they are the same every time. And I just love to see the meat industry reward farmers for quality and eating quality at that.
Andrew, what's your thoughts on that? Because Sirma highlighted there is some incredible work going on with regards to programs that are focusing on the nutritional value of red meat on pasture, regardless of genetics and regardless of breed. How will there be that integration between industry and farmers to achieve this refresh strategy?
Yeah, look, it was interesting to hear your view on that, Guy, because that's, I think you're right on a lot of aspects. There's been a massive swing, though, in collaboration across the sector on a bunch of issues where, quite rightly, you've honed in on the stuff that's really important to the Angus producers, which is, the eating quality. Now, that's actually important to all the meat producers and, the likes of the genetics programs we're doing with intermuscular fats, the validation of our production systems, pasture raised, the attributes, the nutritional value of that. So look, that's all important to our consumers, hence, the taste pure nature and the linkage to all that stuff. I suppose that's one aspect, but I was just going to sort of break down to the collaborative nature of where we've come. There's a whole bunch of other things in our sector which, are quite significant challenges around GHG, the Haywaka quinoas, the water issues, all of those, there's a whole bunch of components that lead to the success of our industry, and that's where I think we have to work collaboratively right across the sector, farmers, producers. When I talk collaborative, I also talk government here so that we get these settings right. And then the other role that we have at Beef and Lamb is when we get these settings or when we get these challenges with eating qualities, etc., we have to deliver the tools all the ways that we can actually deliver on the things we need. So if we go to your point, Guy, around the genetics needed for intermuscular fat or the validation across that of crossbreed, it's the importance of programs like Beef and Lamb Genetics, etc. So I hope that's answered your question, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's great to see, it came across my desk last week, Guy, that there's an industry collaborative roadshow for farmers called whatthebeef.co.nz. You can get all the information coming up. And it is about demonstrating the importance of eating quality. But this has been talked about a lot by breeders as opposed to the commercial farmer, and understanding the importance and all of the elements that at play. It's not just genetics all the time, though, is it?
No, of course it isn't. No, you did right, Sarah. The What's the Beef roadshow is being promoted by PGG Wrightson's Livestock, Bidder and Angus Pure, along with Farmers Weekly, and I'll give them a plug, and Allflex and Zoetis and Gallagher's. There's a hell of a good team of people there in Norwoods. But we saw a need for farmers. This is geared 100% at the commercial farmer, not the stud breeder. The commercial farmer taking advantage of the tools that are there. And Allan referred to that word tools a few times within the industry that aren't getting used. And this is a good example of it. We believe that right from the genomic tools that Zoetis will have a speaker there talking about, right through to the finishing elements that, we're going to have Kerry Lewis will be speaking. They finished something like 2,000 cattle down there at Mount Linton. And so they target the more the extreme programs like Handpicked and the EQ programs at Silver Fern to get extra rewards for the extra work they do. And so, yes, you're right. Genetics, we think, probably plays about a 50% part in it, but management certainly plays another big part in it. And we just, that probably the other 50%. So we want people to be aware of how we can fill those gaps and cross the T's, follow the I's, and et cetera, and so we're going throughout the country from start of May the 1st in Whangarei and finishing on Thursday the following week down in Gore. We do 3 in the South Island, Gore, Kaikoura, and Timaru. But the whole idea is it's not just about, even though Angus Pure is helping fund it, it's about getting people to change their focus, get out of this commodity bin that we're in, and get good quality beef going to all these programs for all the meat companies, not just Angus Pure and partners, everybody.
Andrew, I understand, though, that a carcass comes up, is put together of a lot of different cuts. In your conversations with the Meat Industry Association and collaboration of this, high value cuts and how we market those with these credentials in that will come out of the farm assurance programs only make up a part of our exports. How do we lift the value of the elephant in the room?
Yeah, well, I think, there's been a very significant amount of work done on the Taste Pure Nature space to try and work out what's important with their consumers. And we did a whole bunch of testing in multiple countries because effectively we're an export nation here. So, 90% of our sheep meat's exported, high 80% of our beef is exported. So, we're an export nation. We have to understand what is important to them. So one aspect of what is important to them is the eating quality. The other aspects that are important is the way that we raise our animals, the pasture-raised nature of it, the impact on the environment, be it in that greenhouse gas space and that impact on the water space. The other thing that's important is what's the animal welfare credentials, or effectively the way we raise them and treat them during their life. So that was all the stuff that came back to us when we did the market research. And we've been piloting this on the west coast of the US, and we've launched it in China too, because we've got these conscious foodies which effectively have values which they attribute to their purchases. So there's one thing is the eating quality experience. The other thing is the way that we produce stuff aligns with their values, so they are comfortable eating it. So that's the way that we've collaboratively worked with government and with the meat companies to create value.
And can I just carry on? There was a part in Sirma's article about the multidisciplined cooperation program to partner up with Chinese counterparts to advance the economic development of China's red meat industry through the application of a robust certified supply chain performance system. Can you break that down into layman's terms for me?
Well, I suppose, whenever you make claims around something, you have to validate it. So, we'll go back to the genetics conversation. That's where, the beef EQ program is great because they validate what they do. They have a robust measuring system. The hyperspectraling for the lamb, they have a robust. So that's for the eating quality experiences. For the other claims that we're making around pasture raised, around our impacts on environment, that's with the New Zealand Farm Assurance Program, New Zealand Farm Assurance Program Plus. That gives the validation that the claims that you're making through the markets are actually, you can be audited and you can validate. So that's really important to the consumers because you just can't make claims and you can't back them up.
Yeah, absolutely. So that carries me on, Guy, to the way the industry is structured from our store procurement through to our prime procurement and the loss of data and the lack of integration to get this full farm to fork traceability. What work can be done in that space to go from genetics right through to fork and actually plug these things together when procurement is being done the old-fashioned way?
Yeah, and it's a very good point. And look, just before I answer that question, Sarah, I've just got to give a bouquet to the Beef and Lamb, Andrew. That Taste Pure Nature brand and the work you've done there is outstanding, I believe. Sirma referred to it in her address just a few minutes ago. We're lucky enough to be a partner in that in America. It's opened a door for us in an online business called Crowd Cow, and that only came about through Taste Pure Nature and the support we got from Nick Beebe and his team at Beef and Lamb. So thanks for that, and I fully support everything you're saying at the moment. It's a collaboration. It's all these things. But getting back to your point, it's interesting you talk about that. I was with a friend who's a Queen Street farmer in Hawke's Bay over Christmas, and he was moaning because his Angus cattle that had to keep them 2 winters instead of the Frisian bulls, which they could have got rid of earlier, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, where'd you get your Angus cattle from? And he saw the agents just bought them at sale. And this is just typical of what's happening in the industry. They know nothing about the genetics behind those animals. They know nothing about the history, where they came from. And what we're doing, Angus Pure, in a small way to try and combat that is we put tags in, an Angus Pure tag in cattle that are by a registered Angus bull. So people pay an extra, it's not a big amount of money, it might be an extra 40-50 cents to have the A in their ear, and you'll see a photo of that if anyone goes to whatsthebeef.co.nz. But that's a good symbol to say for people when they go to the sale yards that they firstly are by registered Angus bulls. I mean, there are a lot of black cattle that get called Angus that aren't Angus, and let alone cattle that are Angus, but they're not actually even by pedigree bulls. They're just by commercial bulls that someone's bred themselves, and they've got no idea what the females are, or side of it is. So I think we need this traceability is a really big thing. Nate's done a great job there, but we need to identify, and people need to embrace things like our tagging systems, because that's eligible for all meat companies, so that when they get the animals, they know they're genuine and Angus. And I think that's a step in the right direction.
Andrew, how do you give assurance to sheep and beef farmers listening that this isn't just a hand-holding exercise continuously beyond the farm gate, that the collaboration does continue for farmers behind the farm gate? Your brother, Howie, is a director on Alliance, a farmer director on Alliance, and he understands the capacity problem to keep the plants open in a declining sheep flock here in New Zealand. And then you throw on, do I dare say it, drought, TB, outbreaks, M. bovis, culls, etc., and COVID. I mean, how are we able to continuously achieve value add with a focus that is structurally still on commodity?
Yeah, well, I don't think the focus is on commodity, so I would challenge that sort of statement. I don't think you'll find a sector that's had such productivity gains in New Zealand as the sheep and beef sector. Now, I'll use a figure from last year. I was just looking at it for Derek Daniels for his newsletter the other day. We looked at the average weight of all New Zealand's lambs last year was 19.01. The year before it was 19.13. So in a year with 80% of New Zealand in a drought, we dropped 100 grams on all of our lambs across the country for a 12-month period. But then you impose on that, we actually killed an extra 300,000 lambs that year. So we're not a sector in decline. We're not a commodity sector. We're a highly productive sector where the farmers have got some, and I'm using sheep because these are the figures I had in front of me, but we've got some guys who are making some fantastic on-farm decisions that drive the productivity and returns. And then I would say the same in the meat processing sector. I don't reckon there's a sector that's pivoted and creating the value add component with the likes of Taste Pure Nature and creating, in a COVID world, pivoting their supply into market to get the value back to the farmers. So look, I'm kind of giving bouquets here to the processing sector because they desperately deserve that. They did a fantastic job in the COVID world last year of reprioritising markets, keeping plants open when they had to go to those social distancing rules. And, it was just a standout, basically.
And can I give a bouquet to Rob Hewitt, who has jumped up and put himself in the Strong Wool Action Group, saying if we let wool decline, we will also let our meat industry decline, and the likes of Derek Daniels' wonderful Romneys will be jeopardised by shedding sheep, and then you'll lose taste quality race altogether. So therefore, it's important that we have across both sheep and beef the likes of these premium programs when it comes to genetics just as much, Guy.
Yes. Look, I think I agree with Andrew. Part of what Andrew's saying, I do think we still have a commodity mentality. I mean, farmers jump on board on our program when the price is right, and when the price isn't right, they're nowhere to be seen. So going forward, they're not the people we necessarily want to deal with. But having said that, you've got to pay the bills, and I respect that entirely. But I think we do need a decent grading system, Andrew. I really do, and I think if we can channel some money, government money, towards an MSA type program, it would go a long, long way to helping all farmers at all levels. I mean, we're doing a great job with the marketing, great job at processing, the technologies, etc. And as you said, through COVID, but I just think if we could get a grading system that awarded tenderness, juiciness and flavour for beef, we'd be a well down the track and competing with the Aussies, etc.
And Andrew, Sirma touched on that 2021's focus was asking the government to put a pause on any new regulations and actually help farmers understand the ones that are already on the table. With an increase in on-farm costs because of regulations, a lot of farmers will be seeking in terms of higher value trading options, such as what Guy's saying. So therefore, isn't it appropriate that beef and lamb provide those types of pathways?
Yeah, you're 100% right there, Sarah. You know, as we're facing the challenges of the environmental conversation, which are 100% appropriate, and that we get those rules and regulations right, the whole reason for what we do is we've got a clear understanding that as we do this stuff, we have to create and capture value. And we got to create and capture value with the likes of programs of Taste Pure Nature. And the other significant investment we're doing is in the beef and lamb genetics world of all the stuff that Guy's talking about, like the intermuscular fat, the breeding. The other stuff we're doing is on the farming excellence space. And, you know, Guy, when you said 50% of it's genetics, the other 50% is on-farm management. You know, your choices around your feed regimes, like a simple thing that came out of Mount Linton is they put on a 2-decker, the cattle ramps, and they found that when they were putting up the steep ramps, that the pH was climbing up because they were getting stressed. All the new ramps, the pHs as they went into the farm or the beef EQ program was falling into the acceptable range. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that of tech transfer and learning that we're involved with and that we're doing. So as we learn that stuff, our job at Beef and Lamb is to take these tools and, the knowledge hub and take the advice out so people can sort of activate these things.
Absolutely, and I've got to acknowledge the crossover in the beef and lamb genetics team, of both which the sheep and beef girls are both dear friends of mine, doing an incredible job and actively involved in What's the Beef as well. So I can see the next 5 years being a lot of fun, and there has been a lot of work going on behind the scenes from both of your organisations for a very, very long time. So thank you so much for your time tonight on Sarah's Country, and the very, very first of Opinion Maker, which I'm sure that both of your faces will probably pop up into the future as well. It's been absolutely excellent having you both here tonight. Thank you so much. Andrew Morrison, Chair of Beef and Lamb New Zealand, and Guy Sargant, Director of Angus Pure. I hope you've liked this new format. I certainly enjoyed myself over the last hour. It was actually a lot of fun. So please send me in your thoughts on this particular episode, sarah@sarahscountry.com. And if you want to feature your opinion, make sure you send your pulpit opinion editorial piece through to brian.gibson@farmersweekly.co.nz, and we can build on that conversation around that. Thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow with Wednesday's format, which is called Changemaker, where we focus on innovative solutions, the opportunities and the optimism looking forward with our future of farming, food and fashion here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It will be a very uplifting, inspiring and enlightening delightful episode as we look forward into 2021. Thank you so much for your time. Ka kite anō, and I'll see you again tomorrow night.